The sky above Earth had been torn apart. Fractured by years of warfare, a relentless struggle between human resilience and alien tyranny, the once blue skies were now a murky blend of gray and orange, smoke swirling above decimated cities. Below, the streets were filled with the sounds of chaos, sirens, the distant rumble of explosions, and the steady thrum of military forces marching through ruins. But amid the violence, there was one thing that had remained untouched, unyielding: the human spirit. Commander Liana Hayes stood at the command center of the Tempest, her fingers gripped tightly around the edge of the console. She surveyed the holographic map before her, the planet's topography displayed in vivid detail. Each red dot was a flashpoint of conflict, each flashing yellow a target waiting to be struck. The alien invaders had torn the world apart, but Earth's fight was far from over. A shadow crossed the room, and Liana's second-in-command, Sergeant Miles Darrow, stepped in. His face was streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. He didn't have to say anything. Liana could read the tension in his posture. "They've found our weakness," he said, his voice low. "The reports are clear. We're stretched thin. The last bastion of resistance is about to fall." Liana's eyes narrowed. Earth's military was battered, but not beaten. She knew they were reaching a breaking point. The alien forces, an advanced and ruthless coalition of species, had left humanity on the brink of extinction. But if there was one thing Liana knew, it was that humanity had never gone down without a fight. "I'll handle it," she said quietly, turning back to the map. "Activate the emergency protocol. We're not done yet." Darrow hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "Commander, if we engage them now, we risk everything. We need more reinforcements, more supplies." "We've got no time for reinforcements," Liana snapped, cutting him off. "We fight now, or we let Earth fall. The aliens won't stop until they've erased us from existence. This is our last stand." Darrow nodded reluctantly, understanding the weight of her words. He turned and left the room without another word, and Liana was left alone, staring at the flickering map. Her fingers hovered above the console, hesitating as the gravity of the situation settled in. There was no going back now. Hours later, the Tempest shot through space, the massive warship's engines humming with intensity. Liana stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the distant stars, her mind racing. She had called every shot, made every decision that had led them to this moment. And yet, the weight of it all was crushing. "This is it," she muttered to herself. "Commander," came a voice from behind her. It was Lieutenant Kira Walsh, the ship's weapons officer. "We're in range of the alien command center. The fleet is in position. We're ready for the strike." Liana's jaw tightened. The alien command center was heavily fortified, its defenses nearly impenetrable. But she had one advantage: surprise. The human fleet had maneuvered into position without detection, but they couldn't hold it forever. The time to act was now. "Launch the assault," Liana ordered, her voice unwavering. "All units, full power to weapons. Take them out, and make it count." As the words left her mouth, the Tempest shook with the force of 1,000 weapons firing simultaneously. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the ship's turrets, and the surrounding alien fleet retaliated. But the humans were faster, more desperate. The battle was chaos. Lasers streaking across the vacuum of space, explosions tearing through hulls, and the deafening roar of the ship's engines as they powered through the assault. "We've breached their outer defenses," Walsh shouted from her station. "We're through. Commander, we've got a clear shot at the command center." Liana felt a surge of adrenaline. This was their chance. One shot, one opportunity to end the war and prove that humanity would not be wiped out so easily. "Deploy the boarding teams," Liana commanded. "We hit them hard and fast. No mercy." As Liana and her team moved toward the alien command center, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread gnawing at her gut. This wasn't just another military operation, this was personal. The aliens had invaded Earth, desecrated their cities, and slaughtered countless innocents. But they hadn't broken humanity. Not yet. Liana's boots echoed on the cold metal floors of the Tempest as she led the charge. The air in the hallways was thick with tension as the team prepared to breach the alien command center. Every soldier, every officer, every member of the crew was ready for this moment. This was the culmination of everything they had fought for. "Steady," Liana whispered as they approached the door. "On my mark." The door slid open, and they flooded into the command center, weapons raised. Alien soldiers, armed with advanced energy weapons, turned to face them, their eyes glowing with a cold intensity. But they were outmatched. The humans were faster, more agile, and more ruthless. The battle was swift. Liana and her team cleared the room in moments, leaving only the wreckage of the alien forces in their wake. But there was no time to celebrate. The heart of the alien command center was ahead. If they could disable it, the war would be over. Liana moved toward the central control panel, her mind working at lightning speed. The panel was complex, alien technology flashing across the screen in an unreadable blur. But Liana was a strategist. She had studied alien systems for years, and she knew their weaknesses. "Do it," Liana said, turning to her tech specialist, Sergeant Tomas. Tomas worked quickly, his fingers flying across the control panel. The screen flashed red as the system came to life. "Target locked," Tomas said, his voice triumphant. "Commander, we've got the command center. I'm sending the signal to deactivate the entire network." Liana watched as the countdown began on the screen, the seconds ticking away. There was no turning back now. "Get out of here!" she shouted to her team. "We've got 5 minutes. Move!" The team sprinted down the hallways, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They couldn't afford to be caught. They couldn't afford to fail. As the seconds ticked down, the station began to shake, the alien systems reacting to the breach. Liana's heart raced as they neared the exit, but there was no turning back. The mission was a success. The alien command center was disabled, the network crashing around them. As the team boarded the Tempest, Liana took one last look at the alien command center through the viewport. The station was beginning to crumble, the once imposing structure now reduced to rubble. Humanity had struck a blow, and they had done it together. Liana turned to her crew, her voice steady as she spoke. "We did it. The war is over. But remember this is not the end. It's only the beginning." The Tempest shot through space, its engines roaring as they left the shattered alien station behind. But Liana knew one thing for certain: humanity was far from finished. They had proven their strength. And now, the galaxy would know that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. For the first time in history, Earth was no longer a target. They were the predators now. The war was not over. It had only just begun. Liana stood on the bridge of the Tempest, staring out at the debris field left in the wake of their successful mission. The alien command center, once a symbol of their dominance, now floated in pieces, shattered by the coordinated strike that had crippled their forces. The explosions that had lit up the battlefield were still fresh in her mind, the sense of accomplishment heavy in her chest. But beneath that, there was an undercurrent of dread. "We've won the first round, Commander," Sergeant Tomas said from behind her. "But it won't be long before the rest of the alien fleet regroups. We can't stay here too long." Liana nodded, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Victory had come at a cost. Humanity had won one battle, but the war? The war was far from over. Alien warlords, each with their own armies and agendas, were already preparing their counterattacks. The tournament had been a test of strength and will, but Liana knew that now, it would be a war for survival. "We can't waste time celebrating," Liana said, her voice calm but hard. "We've made our mark, but the aliens won't forget what we've done. They'll be back in force." "Commander," Lieutenant Kira Walsh spoke up, her voice sharp. "The Alien Council is demanding an immediate response. They've requested a ceasefire, and they're preparing to launch reinforcements." Liana's gaze hardened. She turned slowly to face Walsh, her eyes steely. "A ceasefire?" she repeated, disbelief in her voice. "They just lost one of their strongest positions, and now they want peace?" Tell them we'll agree when they've learned to respect Earth. Walsh gave a brief nod and left to send the response. Liana's mind was racing. The aliens had underestimated them once. Now, they thought they could just call for a ceasefire, pretend it was all just a misunderstanding. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Hours passed as the Tempest sailed through the stars, its engines purring with quiet power. Liana and her team had spent the time strategizing, analyzing what had happened, and preparing for the inevitable counterattack. But there was something more pressing now, something that lingered in the back of Liana's mind, a nagging question she couldn't shake. How had the alien forces been so quick to regroup? What had they missed in their mission, in their strategy? We need answers, Liana muttered to herself as she walked down the darkened hallway of the command deck, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Her team had done their best, but there was still too much they didn't know about the alien forces. Too many unanswered questions. The silence of the ship was unsettling. The Tempest was a warship, built for speed and efficiency, but it had the air of something haunted. The crew had fought bravely, but they weren't invincible. The message was clear, even the smallest misstep could lead to their destruction. And with the alien forces rapidly regrouping, it was only a matter of time before they would face their greatest challenge. Liana entered the war room, where her officers were gathered around the holographic table. The map of the galaxy glowed, filled with the swirling, chaotic movement of the alien fleet. "Commander," Wells greeted her as she entered. "We've had an update on the enemy's movements. They've deployed reinforcements from multiple systems, more ships are headed toward us, and their warlords are gathering. They're making their final push." Liana's pulse quickened. This was the turning point. They had a window of opportunity now, but it wouldn't last. "How long until they arrive?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension in her chest. 3 hours, maybe less," Wells replied. "We'll be outnumbered, but if we can hold our ground, we might stand a chance." Liana stared at the map, her mind racing. "What if we don't fight them head-on?" she asked suddenly, her fingers tracing a line across the map. "What if we bait them into a trap?" The officers exchanged looks, but it was Wells who responded first. "You mean lure them into a position where we have the advantage? We'd have to know exactly where they're going." "Exactly," Liana said, her voice calm but determined. "We use their arrogance against them. They think they've won, they think they've got us on the ropes. But they're about to find out that we've learned to adapt faster than they can react." Walsh stepped forward, her face grim. "You're suggesting a decoy mission, let them think they've got us trapped and then turn the tables?" Liana nodded. "That's exactly what I'm suggesting. If we can draw them into an uncharted asteroid field, we'll have the upper hand. They won't be able to track us, and their larger ships will be vulnerable in tight spaces. We'll turn their own tactics against them." As the Tempest approached the asteroid field, the crew went silent. They had made their preparations, setting up the decoy mission to lure the alien forces into their trap. The plan was risky, too risky, some might say, but Liana had no choice. It was their best chance. The ship coasted through the asteroid field, its sleek form blending with the debris. The crew monitored every move, every fluctuation in the enemy's approach. For what felt like hours, they waited in tense silence. The seconds stretched out, their hearts pounding in their chests as they waited for the signal. Then it came. An explosion rocked the ship, not from the enemy, but from the asteroid field itself. A massive piece of debris had been set in motion, timed perfectly to create a diversion. The enemy ships closed in, exactly where they had expected. "Now!" Liana barked. "Deploy everything we've got. Take them down!" The Tempest erupted into action, weapons blazing as they tore into the alien forces. The decoy had worked. The enemy ships were confused, disoriented, unable to regroup. The battle was fierce, but the humans were faster, smarter. They cut through the alien lines like a hot knife through butter. Liana's eyes were fixed on the battlefield, her mind calculating every move. They had won the opening round, but this was far from over. The alien warlords were still out there, and they were just as deadly as ever. "Keep pushing," Liana commanded. We can't stop now. With one final strike, the last of the alien ships was crippled, the once formidable force now nothing more than a shattered remnant of their former selves. The battlefield fell silent. Liana took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the victory. The war had taken a turn, this time, in humanity's favor. But it wasn't over. The tournament wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message. Humanity had won the first battle, but the fight was far from over. The wreckage of the alien fleet drifted through the asteroid field, the quiet aftermath of their fierce battle hanging in the cold void of space. Liana stood at the command center of the Tempest, her hands clenched into fists, her face set in a mask of determination. The battle had been won, but the war? That was still far from decided. We've crippled their forward forces, Commander, Wells reported, her voice steady, but there was an edge of exhaustion in it. But we've lost a few ships in the process. We can't afford to take any more hits like that. Liana nodded, her gaze fixed on the holographic map in front of her. The alien forces had been scattered, but they were still out there. The remaining warlords were gathering, regrouping, and preparing for a counteroffensive. Humanity had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Liana knew that. She could feel it in the air. The galaxy had just watched the human forces defeat the aliens in their own arena, and now the stakes had been raised. It was no longer just about survival. It was about proving humanity's place in the galaxy. We're not finished yet, Liana said, her voice cold with resolve. They'll come for us again. But this time, we're going to give them something they won't expect. We fight back, and we take everything from them. Walsh, who had been monitoring the fleet's movements, spoke up. Commander, their reinforcements are still en route. But this time, they're bringing in their best, elite shock troops, war machines, everything they've got. They'll try to take us down in one final assault. Liana's gaze flicked to the tactical display, analyzing the movements of the alien forces. The attack was coming. There was no way around it. This would be their final confrontation. They had no choice but to face the enemy head-on. We don't retreat, she said, her voice firm. We stand and fight. We've come too far to back down now. The battle started without warning. The Tempest and the remaining human ships moved into position, their weapons primed and shields reinforced. The alien reinforcements arrived in waves, a mixture of heavy warships and specialized strike vessels designed for maximum destruction. But the humans had one advantage, the element of surprise. The alien forces thought they had the upper hand, but they hadn't accounted for the human ingenuity that had fueled every victory. Liana's hand gripped the console as the battle unfolded before her. The alien ships fired first, their weapons lashing out with blistering speed. But the humans were prepared. They danced through the incoming fire, dodging, weaving, returning fire with deadly precision. The Tempest swerved and rolled through the debris of the battlefield, firing its cannons, sending alien warships spiraling into flames. Engage the flanks! Liana barked, watching the holographic display as it lit up with incoming data. We need to split their forces, trap them in the asteroid belt. They won't be able to fight us there. Her fleet moved like a well-oiled machine, each ship executing its maneuver with precision. The alien forces, although numerous and heavily armed, were struggling to keep up with the agility of the human fleet. They had expected a direct confrontation, a simple assault, but humanity wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Instead, they led the aliens into the heart of the asteroid belt, where their larger ships would be less effective, their formations scattered. Hold the line, Liana commanded. We don't stop until they break. The battle raged on, with explosions lighting up the void as ships collided in a deadly dance of fire and metal. Liana's eyes were fixed on the tactical screen, each pulse of light marking another victory or loss. The human fleet was holding their ground, but it was clear that this battle would be the hardest they had ever fought. Every ship was battered, every crew member exhausted. But they didn't stop. They couldn't. As the battle wore on, Liana saw something change in the alien forces. Their once unified front began to fracture. The coordinated assault they had planned was no longer effective. Alien warships were being taken down, their fleets splintering under the weight of the human resistance. It was happening. Humanity was starting to win. But just as the tide seemed to turn, a new threat emerged from the heart of the alien fleet. A massive warship, unlike anything the humans had encountered before, emerged from the darkness. It was larger than anything the human forces had, its hull bristling with weapons and shields, its design sleek and terrifying. This was their last weapon, their final card. "This is it," Liana whispered to herself, her eyes narrowing. "This is what we've been preparing for." The warship was heading straight for the heart of the human fleet, its weapons charging up for a devastating blow. Liana's breath quickened. This was going to be their toughest challenge yet. "Get me a firing solution," she ordered. "We take it down before it reaches us." The Tempest sped toward the alien warship, weapons primed and shields pushed to their limits. The massive ship loomed ahead, firing with relentless intensity. Energy blasts tore through space, narrowly missing the human vessels. But Liana didn't flinch. She had already made her decision. "We fight back," she growled. "Prepare for full assault." The Tempest and the remaining ships dove into the fray, their weapons striking the alien warship with everything they had. But the enemy ship was resilient. It absorbed the hits, its shields holding firm. The humans were losing ground fast. "Commander!" Walsh shouted over the comms, panic in her voice. "We can't keep this up. We need to fall back." "No!" Liana cut her off, her voice fierce. "We finish this. All units, concentrate fire on their engine core." With one final, brutal push, the human ships unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, hammering the warship's core. The alien ship's shields cracked, and the core ignited in a violent explosion that rocked the battlefield. The alien warship screamed in a final, defiant roar before it exploded in a brilliant flash of light, scattering debris across the void. The silence that followed was deafening. Liana sat back in her chair, her body shaking with exhaustion, her eyes fixed on the remains of the alien fleet. The Tempest had taken heavy damage, and the human ships were barely holding together. But the battle was won. The alien warlords had been defeated, their forces shattered. The tournament, their last desperate attempt to eradicate humanity, was over. "Mission accomplished, Commander," Wells said, her voice weary but filled with relief. Liana took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she gripped the armrest. "Not just mission accomplished," she said quietly. "We've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of." As the alien forces retreated into the stars, Liana knew this victory had changed everything. Humanity had proven its worth, and the galaxy would never forget the price they paid to stand at the top. But as she stared out at the stars, a new determination burned within her. This was only the beginning. And humanity's rise was far from finished. The hum of the Tempest's engines was all that broke the silence in the aftermath of the battle. Liana stood at the command center, eyes fixed on the fractured remains of the alien warships drifting in the black expanse of space. Their final assault had been everything the aliens had hoped for, a desperate, all-or-nothing push to crush humanity once and for all. But in the end, it had failed. Humanity had endured. And now, for the first time in years, Earth was no longer a target. The defeat of the alien warlords had sent a ripple of disbelief through their ranks, the sheer audacity of humanity's resistance shaking the foundation of their confidence. The tournament had been an attempt to subjugate the human race, to force them into submission under the guise of a test of strength. But Liana knew better. The real test had been one of endurance, of proving that humanity had something the alien forces couldn't understand: resolve. "We did it," Wells said, breaking the silence as she approached, her voice strained but tinged with relief. "We've won. The alien fleet is retreating. Their remaining forces are scattered." Liana's eyes remained fixed on the stars outside. She hadn't taken her gaze away since the battle had ended, her mind still processing the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. "Not yet," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. "What do you mean?" Wells asked, her voice thick with exhaustion. There's always more, Liana said, turning away from the view and walking toward the hollow table at the center of the room. The map of the galaxy was now dotted with alien activity. It had been a decisive victory, but there was more at play here. The tournament was only a symptom of a deeper power struggle that spanned the galaxy. Liana's fingers hovered over the display as she zoomed in on a new cluster of movement, alien ships regrouping, this time with more firepower, more reinforcements from distant sectors. They were preparing for another attempt. And she couldn't afford to be complacent. We need to take the fight to their heart, Liana said. Her voice was hard, her decision final. The warlords may be gone, but their influence still runs deep. We go after the central hub, their control centers. We shut down their operations completely. The Tempest glided through the darkness of space, its hull patched with hastily applied repairs. The ship had endured countless hits during the battle, and its systems were pushed to the limit, but it was still flying. Humanity's final push had begun. Liana stood on the bridge, looking out at the approaching alien command station. It was the nerve center of the enemy's forces, the place where all decisions had been made, the station that had overseen humanity's supposed testing and manipulation. It was time to end the reign of the alien oppressors once and for all. We're nearing their command station, Lieutenant Walsh said, her voice sharp as she worked the controls. Their defenses are already online. This won't be easy. Liana met her gaze. I don't need it to be easy. We're here to finish what we started. The final battle was underway. The Tempest's guns roared to life, joining the others in the human fleet as they engaged the alien defenses. The station, once an impenetrable fortress, was now facing its most formidable adversary, a human fleet unwilling to back down. The enemy was ready this time, with energy shields that crackled with power and weapons designed to obliterate anything that came close. The human fleet fought hard, but the Tempest was leading the charge, drawing the alien fire toward it. All units, follow my lead! Liana barked, her voice steady over the comms. We pierced their shields, and we hit them hard. Don't give them a moment to react. The Tempest surged forward, narrowly dodging the deadly blast of an alien weapon. Sparks flew as the ship's shields flared, but it held. The human fleet followed suit, blasting through the alien lines, cutting into their defensive perimeter. The station loomed ahead, its massive form becoming more defined with each passing second. But as they drew closer, the full scale of the alien defenses became clear. They were dealing with something beyond their expectations. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was the last stand for both sides. We're almost through, Walsh shouted, her voice tight with focus. But we've got incoming, multiple enemy ships heading straight for us. Liana's eyes never left the battlefield. Hold them off. Don't let them break our line. The battle intensified. Alien warships poured out of the station's hangar bays like a swarm, their weapons slicing through the human fleet's defenses. The Tempest shuddered under the impact of another blast, but it pushed forward, relentless. Prepare for boarding, Liana commanded, her voice like iron. We're taking this station. The moment they breached the station's outer hull, Liana's team moved in, weapons drawn, ready for whatever lay ahead. The alien soldiers inside were well prepared, but they had never faced humans like this before. The human soldiers were swift and deadly, moving through the corridors with military precision, clearing rooms and neutralizing enemies as they went. The walls shook with each explosion, but the team pressed forward. They had one goal: to reach the command center, where the alien leaders operated, and bring the station to its knees. Liana's heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of the moment. She had been here before, in battles where the odds seemed impossible, but this felt different. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for everything humanity had ever stood for. They reached the command center after what felt like an eternity of fighting. The door stood before them, reinforced and locked with alien technology. Liana stepped forward, her weapon at the ready. But before she could give the order to breach, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the last of the alien warlords, his armor gleaming under the artificial lights. His face was cold, calculating, and cruel. "You think you've won?" he sneered, raising his weapon. "You have no idea what you've just triggered. The tournament was nothing compared to what's coming next." Liana stood tall, her voice unwavering. "We've already won. And you're going to learn that humanity doesn't just survive, we dominate." With one final motion, she fired, hitting the warlord square in the chest. The room fell silent as his body crumpled to the ground. "We've ended this war," Liana said, her voice heavy with the weight of their victory. "But there's more to do. Humanity has just begun." The alien command center crumbled around them, its systems failing one by one. As the Tempest and the rest of the human fleet destroyed the heart of the alien operations, the universe seemed to shift. The alien forces were no longer invincible, their grip on the galaxy shattered. As Liana looked out at the remains of the alien station, she knew one thing for certain: humanity had risen, not just as survivors, but as conquerors. The galaxy had been put on notice. And this was only the beginning. "Let's go home," Liana said softly, her voice filled with quiet determination. The fight was over for now. But the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning.